Well, if you ever wanted to visit one of the most successful fish hatcheries in Alaska, then Hidden Falls would be a good choice. While they produce Chinook and Coho fry, the chum salmon part of the operation is really economically the most important. And this is Ross with the chum salmon that he caught as we were drifting in the bay just outside of the hatchery. And where is Hidden Falls? They're located on the eastern side of Baranof Island, just a short distance up from Warm Springs Bay, which is another area that we have a video on. We're going to take a Google Earth overflight here from Petersburg, where we'll make nearly, well, let's say 97-mile run up Frederick Sound there. And then as we come around, we'll see Stevens Passage on the right, and then we'll head to the west towards the southern end of Admiralty Island and Baranof Island. Red Bluff Bay, Warm Springs Bay, all great stops. There's Warm Springs Bay there. And then here we'll zoom into where the Hidden Falls Hatchery is. And here's the dock at Hidden Falls and some statistics. So in terms of the number of fry that have survived over the winter and then are released the next year, 95 million chum, 3 million coho, 600,000 chinook. And you can see the chum make up the vast majority of the fish that this hatchery is really designed to produce. They're very successful each year. They get returns of nearly 2 million fish every year, and that attracts hundreds of purse seiners that come in to harvest the fish as they return. Visiting the hatchery has become popular enough that they've actually instituted a reservation system now. So if you look in the lower left, there'll be a URL that you can copy and paste into your browser, and they'll take you to a calendar where you can pick a date and then a time slot for when you'd like to come. I was surprised at how many fish hatcheries exist in Canada and the US. And if you include those plus the output from 3 other salmon producing countries, South Korea and Japan and Russia, they release over 5 billion salmon every year into the ocean. Just a staggering number to me, at least I didn't realize that. And looking at the Hidden Falls hatchery itself, there's a number of components that I'd like to talk about, starting from the ocean and working our way up. There's the fish weir that most of the fish that are accumulating in the bay will be held outside of the weir, and then only a certain number, 10,000 every day, are allowed up the weir and into the freshwater lagoon. And that'll be the holding area. There's a net strung across there to keep those fish from trying to migrate up the stream to Hidden Falls Lake, which is where everybody's trying to get to. From the lagoon, then the fish will move up the fish ladder into raceways, where they'll be held and then moved into the spawning areas. From the spawning area, the eggs are extracted. Those go into the incubation area, and then the eggs will be held over winter in that area. And then the next spring, early spring, they'll be moved either to the coho ponds or to the saltwater rearing pens. So this video starts at the fish weir. There's netting strung across here. Stay behind the netting. There's grizzlies on the downstream side. There were 6 there when we first arrived. Those fish that they allow out of the bay and into the freshwater lagoon, we're going to take a look at that next. So we'll see all the fish that are, this is the ones that they have allowed in. So there's 10,000 fish here roughly. And I think you can see them underneath the glare on the water. I'll try and shift down here a little bit more vertical. And they're swimming around. When we got there, they were just getting ready to open up the entrance to the fish ladder. So you can see the fish are all stacked here, anxious to get up the ladder. The ladder has kind of an interesting of itself, they have a number of eddies that they've been built into the ladder to simulate the natural holding areas that the fish would encounter in a stream as they were trying to migrate in a normal situation. At the top of the fish ladder are these raceways. So there's two of them that you can see fairly clearly here, and then on the other side of the fence there are more. And then the fish are held here and then moved into the spawning sheds where they're electroshocked and the eggs are extracted from there. The carcasses of the eggs of the fish that have been uh, spawned then go into totes, and there's a fish tender that hangs out in the bay, and those fish then get sent to the tender to be processed and ready for sale. At the end of the day, they've accumulated, they can probably get about 14 million eggs a day, and those are stored in the tubs for about 3 months until they're mature enough to be handled and moved. Then they go over to those aluminum boxes that you see on the right side there, and they'll stay there over the winter, and they're monitored, and they will live off the nutrients in their yolk sacs. And then once spring has arrived and the nutrients are pretty much depleted, those fry are moved to the saltwater rearing pens, where they are fed for several months and then released into the wild. One of the interesting things about this process in the winter, as they will control the temperature of the water that the fry are living in, and just like a tree in warmer winters or warmer seasons and colder seasons, the growth will vary. So when the water is warm, the fish grow faster, and the layers of bone that are produced are wider. And then when they change the water to be a little bit colder, then the bone structure is narrower. And so if you've ever seen people take salmon heads and wildlife biologists extract the otolith bone, what they are looking at is the almost like a barcode, the bone structure within that bone is unique to the fish where the fish was grown or how they grew up. So each salmon hatchery will do this sort of process, and they'll have a unique code for the fish that are raised in their hatchery. So you can tell when you catch a hatchery raised fish where it came from because of that barcode in their otolith bone. So so here we are in the spring. Let's say we've brought all the fry out into either the saltwater rearing pens for chum, or for coho and chinook into big above ground tubs like this. They're being fed here as well, and you can see as we look over the side the thousands of fry that are swimming around in here, getting larger and larger in preparation for them being released out into the ocean. One last topic, when they were developing the Hidden Falls site for the hatchery, they encountered remnants of First Nations occupation in this area, which they dated back to approximately 10,000 years ago. Some of the artifacts that were found were these obsidian microblades. So these would be attached to bone or a stick and used as a knife would be used. Geologists have been able to identify from the unique, geochemical characteristics of this obsidian that it came from a particular site about 180 miles away in British Columbia up the Stickeen River. One of the interesting elements here is that indicates there were trade routes, at least, between the coastal Indians and the natives that lived in the interior of BC. And that raises some questions about, well, did the First Nations people migrate along the coast to get to these areas, or did they migrate from the interior and then down the river systems to the coast? Anyhow, Well, that's all I have to say about Hidden Falls. I always thought that was a really cool place to visit, and thanks for watching. I hope you get a chance to visit here too.